Our top story, a group of US lawmakers have arrived in India. The delegation has met the Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, with the head of the delegation saying President Joe Biden will soon sign a bill that aims to press China to resolve the Tibet dispute. The American delegation on a two-day visit to Dharamshala is led by US House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaul. The delegation of lawmakers include former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and prominent congressional members. After meeting the Dalai Lama, the former American House Speaker called the meeting as a blessing and an honor to meet Tibetan spiritual leader. She also said that the Tibet Resolve Act is a message for China.
This bill is a message to the Chinese government that we have clarity in our thinking and our understanding of this issue of the freedom of Tibet. So thank you for making this bill the policy of the United States of America, which says to the Chinese government, things have changed now, get ready for that. And also understand this. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, with his message of knowledge and tradition and compassion and purity of soul and love, he will live a long time and his legacy will live forever. But to you, President of China, you'll be gone and nobody will give you credit for anything.
With all the war and conflict in the world, that his message brings peace, and he talked a lot about the science of the brain and the Tibetan monk does not have conflict and anger, but is very peaceful. I think moving forward, the science behind the brain of the Buddhist monk is going to be very helpful. I also talked about moving forward with China to have a free Tibet.
China's criticism of the visit was immediate and unsurprising. Beijing warned Washington, D.C. of resolute measures to be initiated by China to firmly defend its sovereignty, security and development interests if American President Biden signs the new bill into a law. Our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, also got a chance to meet the president of the Tibetan government in exile. Take a look.
The Chinese always react adversely to any thing that is happening around the world which they don't agree with. So it's not a surprise. I think the world should not also be surprised because of their statements and the positions on Tibet. They occupied our nation, and now they are saying that His Holiness is a separatist. And His Holiness always says middle way to find a negotiated, non-violent, mutually beneficial, lasting solution to the cause of Tibet or the Sino-Tibet conflict. So now the question is, who wants Tibet to be separated from China, whether it's the Chinese government or His Holiness the Dalai Lama? That is something to judge for the international community. If it is not for the government and people of India, we don't exist. So we have always been very, very grateful to the government and people of India for their support over the decades. Successive governments, whoever comes into power, have been very, very supportive. And I always say that without India's support, we would not exist here as government in exile or Central Tibetan administration.
We are also joined by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibal, live from Dharamshala. Siddhant, what are the key takeaways of the meeting between the US delegation and the Dalai Lama? You are reporting on ground. Do shed us light.
Well, essentially, the US delegation had a meeting earlier today here in Dharamshala, exactly the place where I'm standing. There was a public reception as well. But meeting with His Holiness Dalai Lama, we saw the statements of the US legislators who said that they first of all emphasized on his role in the world and how his message of peace is important. The second, of course, is the Resolve Tibet Act. Now, this act passed by the US Congress just recently calls upon the government in Beijing to engage with the officials of the Tibetan government in exile. It also calls on the US State Department to counter the Chinese misinformation. So these were the two areas of conversations, but all in all, an important visit to Dharamshala that, of course, has angered Beijing.
Right, Siddhant. The Tibet bill has angered Beijing. How do you view the dialogue now between the Chinese government and the Tibetan leaders unfolding?
Well, essentially, there was a round of dialogue in the first decade of this century. In 2009 or 10, the talks went, but no progress happened since then. Recently, of course, the Tibetan government in exile said that there have been few conversations, but Chinese were quick to deny that. Now, we know that what's the view of the Chinese government about Tibet. They see Tibet as a part of China, as part of One China, and also call on countries to reaffirm One China policy. But that's not the case for many Tibetans across the world, including here in India, who see their homeland in occupation. So essentially, this visit of the US delegation, the lawmakers, the delegation who met the Dalai Lama, was to emphasize the US Congress's commitment to the Tibetan cause. But will it make an impact on the Washington-Beijing relationship? Because we have seen nascent improvement in the relationship, but this visit can jeopardize that in a very crucial year for US when US goes to elections.
Right. Siddhant Sibal, thank you for joining us on the broadcast to continue tracking for us the latest updates on Pelosi's visit to Dharamshala. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.